To say Formula 1 is a fair sport is like saying apples are blue. I mean, it's only true if you're willing to completely ignore the facts. Or maybe if you're colorblind, then you might actually get a free pass for that one. But F1 has plenty of moments deemed unfair, from races that were fixed to claims of teammates not getting the same car, and someone telling Pierre Gasly this haircut was a good idea. Sometimes, though, it's not just the teams and drivers making the sport unfair. Sometimes it's the actual rules of the sport itself. So what I thought I'd do as a random British man who likes watching funny cars go round is talk about these unfair rules and decide whether I personally would change them or not, and if I am going to change them, what I would change them to. So let's start off with the virtual safety car. Now, at first, you might be thinking, Mr. Dan, what could possibly be unfair about a bunch of cars driving slowly instead of really fast? Okay, well, first let me explain what the virtual safety car does. No, it's not a Fortnite safety car if you're 5 years old and watching this video. Explaining it in very simple terms, the virtual safety car is essentially just a time limit to get around the track. So drivers have to stick to a delta, for example, 2 minutes to make it round the track. If they go faster than that 2 minutes, say 1 minute 59, they will be issued a penalty. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's all you really need to know.
Thanks, Dan, no skill.
The virtual safety car is usually used for smaller incidents that don't require a full safety car. You know, something small like Liam Lawson's tears being cleaned off the track after being fired from Red Bull. I'm sorry, man, but you should have known this was going to happen when you signed that contract. Sometimes, however, the VSC can actually be deployed for less than a lap. It might be like Lance Stroll falls asleep at the wheel and forgets to brake, hitting into the back of someone. His front wing then falls off into the middle of the track, and therefore the VSC gets deployed. Now the funny orange Marshall man, he'll run off onto the track, grab the wing and bring it back, and once the track is obviously clear, it can go green and the cars can go racing again. So what that means is that 45-second to like 1 minute window the VSC is out, 5 or 6 cars who just happen to be near the pit lane might get the chance to pit. It may even be less than that. And with everyone else on the track going really slowly, I'm sure you can start to piece together in your brain how you make up more time in the pit stop than if you were doing it under normal racing conditions. So you can sort of see where the issue starts to come in, where it's unfair. A few lucky people might get a free pit stop purely because they're in the right place on the track. I'm sure for any of you F1 game players out there, this has happened to you an absolute ton, where you've just driven past the pit lane and the VSC comes out and your championship rival Jam Pancakes gets to pit. Speaking of the F1 game, actually, if you do plan on pre-ordering or buying the game when it fully releases, you can get 10% off the standard edition of F1 25 and 15% off the iconic edition just by using code DANNOSKILL on the EA app at checkout. This only works on the EA app. You can't do it through Steam or if you're buying it on console, just on PC. Obviously, a portion of whatever you spend on the game goes back to the channel, so it helps me out too. Moving on, this VSC shit can be annoying as hell, especially if the team or driver you like is on the wrong side of it. But the question you're all asking me, probably, is Dan, is it actually worth changing this rule? All right, number one, if I was gonna fix this, and that's a big if, I've not decided yet, it is a really easy fix to make things fair. All you say is that when the VSC comes out, the pit lane is closed, and therefore you can't gain time under the pit stops. But me personally, and I'm assuming like 99% of you who watch this video and haven't had like the worst VSC timing at Monaco in F1 24, you probably wouldn't change this.
No.
Part of the fun in Formula 1 is that at any time, Esteban Ocon committing a attempted murder on his teammate could lead to a VSC, or this even applies really to the safety car, just to a lesser extent. And those in a good position on the track can head off to the pits and get a free pit stop, a nice fresh pair of tires. We all know those Pirellis go rotten by like lap 2, even if it's the hard compound. But what this does for us viewers is it entertains us because it switches up the order of the race.
if I'm not 16.
And it's become such an integral part of the sport. You even get a little graphic at the bottom of the screen now telling you how much time the cars will gain if a VSC or safety car comes out and they choose to pit. I think even most of the drivers would agree that being able to pit under these circumstances is a good part of Formula One, because a lot of the time they see it as, well, it might not work in my favor all the time, but when we get it right, it does work in my favor. I mean, just to add to this point, I kind of touched on this already, but this does obviously also apply to the safety car, kind of to a lesser extent, because everybody will have the option to pit. You know, the safety car is never out for like half a lap and then just dips. Apart from when it crashed at Italy. I just remembered that. Fuck it. Unsafety car. We saw with Lando in Miami 2024 how he massively advantaged from a safety car. Every time I say massive, I just think of that one guy in the comments who always puts the low taper fade meme. But anyway, in 2024, when he had that advantage at Miami, the safety car came out at just the right time for Lando. A few other people had already pit for fresh tires, so they were further back. The safety car comes out, Lando gets a lovely little window to just slot in. That's my impression of a pit stop. But again, I wouldn't change this. I don't think any of the drivers would change this. Even Max was just like, some days it works in your favor, some days it doesn't.
And it's always if, right? If my mom had balls, she would be my dad, so...
It's time to move on to another unfair rule of Formula One, and this time it's to do with qualifying. What if I told you there was technically a way to manipulate qualifying at some tracks in Formula One? Technically it would work at all of them, but not really. At a few certain tracks, you can really strategically work the rules in your favor to gain an advantage. But the worst thing is there's very little way you can actually prove someone has done this. Let me just do a little bit of yapping. So at the moment in Formula One, if you crash in qualifying and bring out the yellow or the red flags, you are absolutely fine. You get to keep your qualifying time. So let's say I was in Formula One for some reason. I don't know, maybe Fred Vasseur got a brain injury and decided he would sign me for some reason. So I go on the team radio, I go, "Oi, watch me set the fastest lap you've ever seen." And then I send it into the wall in turn 1. If I already had a previous lap that put me in 12th place, a 1 minute 22.6, just for example, I would get to keep that time even though my car is in the garage being put back together with sticky tape. So when I crash, let's just say I bring out the red flags. If there were 10 minutes of qualifying left, once the red flag is clear, everyone gets to go back out and set some more lap times. So let's say everyone went back out whilst my car was still being rebuilt and I was out of qualifying, and my 122.6 is still on the leaderboard. I might drop from 12th to say 14th. Maybe I out-qualified Logan Sargent still. Now this all seems fair enough at the moment, right? I mean, sure, I might have made it through to Q2, which I won't be able to take part in, so there's less drivers getting an opportunity, but that is just the harsh reality of the sport. That's not an unfair rule. But the thing is, chances are, with my car completely smashed up in the wall, because I haven't meant to crash, I'll probably be getting served an Esteban Ocon level of grid penalties before the next race. So I'll probably be starting at the back anyway. But now, let's put this scenario in Monaco. Monaco is like trying to fit a fucking semi-truck on a go-kart track. There's only room for about an F1 car and Yuki Tsunoda to go side by side in Monaco. This means that nowadays, with Formula One cars the size of a small cargo ship, a spin at Monaco will likely bring out the red flags. Because chances are you can't do a 3-point turn in these F1 cars, and you'll need a crane to lift you out of the track and send you back to the pits. What this means is technically at Monaco, you can end a qualifying session early. If I bring you back to my previous example of me being your average teammate in F1 co-op career, if I crashed that instead of 10 minutes left in Q1, and I instead crashed with only 40 seconds left of Q1, the FIA would go, well, there's no point resuming the session because no one has any time to get round and start a new lap, so we'll just finish it there. So let's say you are on Monaco provisional pole position, or maybe Monaco P3, but your teammate behind is going a lot faster than you. But there's less than a minute or so left, so if qualifying were to end now, they would never let anyone go out for another lap, so you can just have a little whoops and end qualifying early before your teammate beats you.
I'll fuck you up Call Birmingham now, and I'll fuck you up.
Sergio Perez allegedly at Monaco 2022. He did go on to win that race, which was very suspicious, and Max really didn't seem too happy about his spin in qualifying. So how do you counter this? How do you make this fair? Well, the solution is actually surprisingly quite simple. If you're the car responsible for the red flag coming out, your qualifying time gets deleted. Not only would this add more punishment for a mistake, but it means you can't be rewarded for doing something wrong. However, I hate to break it to you all who are thinking I finally solved the issues of Formula 1, because no, this does not completely fix everything, especially not at tracks like Monaco or Baku. See, the thing is, these tracks, it's so easy to fake a spin and cause a yellow flag, which of course will force the people behind you to slow right down and probably have to abandon their laps. And there are times this has happened. For example, Monaco 2014 with Nico Rosberg. Obviously, Britney Spears claims that she didn't bring out the yellow flags on purpose, but teammate Lewis Hamilton was pretty sure Nico did.
But what about in terms of mending bridges with your friend?
Well, we're not friends.
Oh my goodness.
Or how about this crash from Schumacher in 2006 Monaco qualifying, which has got to be the worst fake crash I have ever seen in my life. But Fernando, mate, you might not want to look because he was holding you up in this one. Any comments on it?
I will choke Schumacher into little tiny pieces if I don't stis again.
Right. Lovely stuff, Fernando. The problem is you can't really punish people for bringing out a yellow flag, because when people make a genuine mistake like Leclerc in the Baku sprint qualifying of 2023 and the yellow flags do come out, channeling his classic I am stupid energy, it's not really fair to punish him for holding up basically no one. The only person he held up was Carlos Sainz's teammate, and I can tell you for a fact this one wasn't on purpose because Sainz was absolutely nowhere near him the entire weekend. So would I change either of these rules? Well, yes, I would. As much as there's not a whole lot you can really do about the whole yellow flags thing, you just have to watch Michael Schumacher do the shittiest crash ever. It is sort of just one of those things that's gonna happen every now and then. And as long as it's not too blatantly obvious, you can't really punish people for it. But I do think if someone is responsible for bringing out a red flag at any track in qualifying, they should have their lap time deleted, because chances are, especially if it's Q3 or Q2, they aren't going to be getting back out onto the circuit anyway, so you might as well give someone else a chance to gun for a higher position. It also means that for us Ferrari fans, we can no longer have Charlie Leclerc crash on qualifying, but still get pole position.
Position! Pole position!
And then on the formation lap, have his gearbox blow up and cause us all immense pain and suffering, and our therapist to be very, very rich. Maybe that one got a little bit too personal. Moving on, let's talk about some more unfair rules to do with the red flags, because it does not end there. And this next one, I think this is going to be the most divisive one between you lot so far. I think a lot of people want to change this, but also a lot don't want to change this. To be fair, if you're already down in the comments telling me how Schumacher's accident was definitely not on purpose, and how he also didn't do 94 with Damon Hill on purpose and 97 with Villeneuve on purpose, sure, buddy, you copium. Why don't you just go ahead and click the little subscribe button whilst you're down there in the comments anyway. Also, while I'm at it, I'm gonna become the pro yapper here, but just for a second, I really want to thank the cool people who are the channel members. You guys are absolute legends. I really do appreciate you becoming them. Obviously you can from 99p a month, and these guys here have been supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. It goes a long way. Anyways, back to red flags, and let's actually talk about this shit. So earlier on in this video, if you were listening and you didn't just have this open on your second monitor whilst you were playing Rainbow Six Siege, oh, fuck off. I mentioned about how you can lose out on pit stops because of the safety car. Let's put it into an example. So, let's say you're Sid the Sloth Van Strap-on and you're in P1. And in P2 is the Ice Age baby, Yuki Tsunoda, your teammate. Now you, Verstappen, go into the pit lane because you want some fresh tires. All of a sudden, you get back out onto the track and boom, safety car. That's right, Logan Sargent has transcended time and space to cause an accident. So now, Ice Age baby Yuki Tsunoda, who's not pit yet, is in the lead with a 20-second gap to you. He then gets to pit under the safety car, gets a lovely free pit stop, and you're stuck behind Lance Stroll, who's doing the weirdest strategy ever, staying out on the hards for a million billion laps. Obviously, if you're Verstappen, that is going to annoy you. But if you're Yuki, you're pretty happy. However, the sort of balancing thing is Yuki only gained a little bit. He's 10 seconds and a Lance Stroll in front of you should be pretty easy to get past and start racing him. Well, what if we retell that scenario, but instead of a safety car, it's a red flag? So again, you're Van Strappen, you do your pit stop, you come out in 6th place or whatever behind the Kick Sauber and Stroll. This time, Nikita Mazepin teleports through a black hole and causes a red flag. Now this time, when the race restarts, in the positions you were last in on the track, so you were P6 coming out the pits, everybody gets to put on fresh tires. So that Kick Sauber and Lance Stroll that's in front of you doing a really weird strategy on 50-year-old lap hards. 50-year-old? You get what I mean? Well, now they're going to be incredibly hard to pass, and the Ice Age baby is in first with brand new fresh tires to go to the end. You've basically missed out on the win by doing nothing wrong yourself. And we have seen absolutely loads of this in recent years, especially as F1 seems to recently be handing out red flags like bread to ducks. Formula Duck, if you're watching this, I hope you like white bread. The most recent example would be Brazil 2024. This was where Lando Norris and funny T-pose man pitted about a millisecond before the red flag.
I can't believe you've done this.
Which led to Esteban Ocon, of all people, on the podium. Thank God he didn't say that again, or I genuinely would have launched a nuclear arsenal at the Sao Paulo podium. Now, obviously, there is a very simple way to make this fairer. I'm sure if you're watching at home, you know how to do this. You just don't allow the drivers to change the tires under the red flag. You can also fix damage under the red flag, which I don't see getting used that often. It doesn't seem to come into play much, but it is interesting that you can. This means, obviously, when you get racing again, some cars will have to do their pit stop still. But would I, personally, make this change? Hell no. I know some of you probably would. Maybe some of you have seen drivers you like miss out on wins recently because of this rule. But the reason I wouldn't is because, number one, some of the most surprising and best drives we've seen from drivers in recent years have happened because of this rule. Let's say Monza 2020. From a red flag restart there, Pierre Gasly managed to win the race. And being able to see someone like Gasly winning the Alpha Skibbity Fortnite Roblox Coco Melon V-Bucks Visa Cash App Balls car, well, that's far more interesting than
Lewis Hamilton takes the checkered flag and wins.
Number two, there is actually strategy to red flags. I know it might seem like random chance, but all of the F1 teams go into a race with a Mount Everest size amount of data. Part of this data is actually the likelihood of a race having a VSC, a safety car, or a red flag. So what teams can do at tracks that are very technical, like Jeddah or Azerbaijan, they will see there is a very high chance of there being a safety car or a red flag. They can look at previous years and see how often that's happened. What that lets them do is work out whether they should pit in the usual pit window, or maybe wait a little bit longer and see if it's worth staying out on older tires to potentially get a free pit stop from a safety car or a red flag. Sometimes this can pay off, like again in Brazil 2024. All of the teams there would have known that with a track that wet and with quite a few rookies and stuff on there was an increased likelihood of a red flag. But the risk is the longer you stay out on those tires, the more they wear down, the less grip you have, the more likely it is you're going to be the one causing the red flag. And obviously the reward potentially getting that nice free pit stop. We actually saw the ultimate gardener, George Russell, having this conversation with his team. George kept saying the red flag was imminent, and Mercedes were like, "Not art, George. We must pit and farten now because we need some new tires. We need to trust the data." That's a terrible Toto Wolff impression. Guys, I tried my best. Oh my God, is that the Big Ben? In the end, it was Russell who was right, and doing that pit stop cost them a shot at the win. Russell Russell was leading the race after all. But finally, the third reason I am against changing this red flag rule is that F1 seem to be making some changes with the red flags. Over the last 2 seasons, 2023, 2024, it really did feel like F1 was handing out more and more red flags for incidents that you might honestly be able to resolve with just a safety car. And this is something backed up by stats. We saw a rise in red flags. This did start to push quite a few of us F1 fans to go, okay, actually, maybe we need to look at changing these rules of being able to change your tires under a red flag. Because let's be honest, it is a bit shitty to see so frequently people getting screwed over by the red flags, especially when it felt more like luck and less like a strategy call. But now, with the way in Australia 2025, F1 seemed to be a lot more comfortable putting the safety car out instead, even if there was a bit of machinery out on track, but as long as it was still safe. It makes me think they've maybe talked about this and cut back a little bit on the red flags. Yippee! Had to get one in there. And this is something the drivers themselves praised the FIA for after Australia, even if the Twitter warriors were furious and saying it was near life-threatening for Lando Norris to drive less than motorway speeds half a meter away from a truck. Just never show those guys the 24 hours of Nürburgring. But this means as long as it's something rare, something that can occasionally just switch up the race and the Alpha Skibbity Towery gets on the podium and wins, I am absolutely fine with allowing fresh tires under red flag conditions for all of those previous reasons I mentioned. Plus, it's entertainment over fairness. No one really cares when you get a mega race out of it. Of course, there is another rule that is really bugging people when it comes to F1 at the moment, because it's something that, number one, seems very inconsistent, and number two, very stupid. I'm of course talking about being ahead at the apex. Right now in Formula 1, if you would like to push someone off the track, that is, no, not wrong or a penalty worthy. You just need to be ahead at the apex. Honestly, I've tried to wrap my head around these rules a million times, and I still don't feel like I'm fully grasping what the FAA are trying to explain, and I think the drivers feel the same way because they seem to find this very inconsistent. But there's basically 2 ways this goes. Either you're on the inside, you're ahead at the apex, and therefore you're allowed to just go up to the curb and push the other person off if you'd like to, because the corner is yours, as if you can own the corner. Either that, or you're ahead at the apex on the outside going into the corner, and if the person on the inside pushes you wide, they will either get a 5-second penalty, or you're allowed to stay there on the curb and join them back on the track because they've pushed you off and the corner was yours. As much as, like, on paper this kind of seems like a fair enough way to judge it, there's actually a bunch of if, buts and maybes that come along with this.
I don't do if, buts and maybes, I do absolutes. And, you know, like, if your aunt's had balls, she'd be your uncle, but she doesn't, so she's not.
You need to make the move stick safely. You could just run off, no intention of staying on it. Okay, it's fucked. To start with, there's basically the fact that you can pretty much get away with an unsafe dive bomb just because you're ahead going into the corner. Then there's also the fact that the definition of an apex isn't really set in stone. You've got to remember, both of you are coming in at different angles, which means technically both of your apexes will be at different places. If you're on the inside, your apex will be earlier. If you're on the outside, chances are it can be later. Then there's the fact that you're allowed to push someone off in certain situations because reasons. You want to know my kind of solution to this? It's still far from perfect. I don't think you can ever make overtaking completely fair. There's always going to be controversy in that. What if we just allowed it so that when cars were battling, track limits were again extended to be the curbs and the runoff? You know, just so the F1 drivers can keep it side by side for a bit longer and make it more entertaining for us, the viewer. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still the issues with the inconsistencies that we suffered with for years before the definitive white line rule came into play. But at least with this, you can get some good-ass side-by-side racing, which might help let you ignore the fact that they're going off the track. Instead of me really answering that one, though, I'd prefer to send it over to you. How would you fix overtaking and the ahead at the apex rule? Something that not many other series of motorsport have. Whilst you're telling me, remember to pressy the subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. Especially if you've got this far into the video of listening to me yap, you might as well just watch some more. Also, again, a big thank you to the channel members. Like I said before, you guys are absolute legends. I really do appreciate your support. It means an absolute ton to me, and it helps keep the channel going, which is greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching. Have a good one, and goodbye.